Christmas Eve today. And all through December, we've been talking about expectations. And tonight, I want to talk about what I believe is one of the great barriers to faith, which is expectations that we put on God. And if you struggle with having a consistent faith, you follow God intensely for a little bit, you're in church without missing for a few months, you read your Bible every day for a few weeks, but then you fall off the bandwagon, this message is for you. If you struggle with consistent trust that God will keep his promises in your life, if you struggle with consistent peace that God is actually with us and feeling that peace, this day is for you. And I think most people, honestly, we're at a place in America where we believe in God. The religion of atheism is dying because of modern physics, science, archaeology, and empirical logic. We know that God is real. Other world religions like Islam and Mormonism have been proven false, especially by archaeology and history. But the God of the Bible is clearly the one true way for so many reasons. And I think many of us struggle with consistently following that God in our life, not because of a lack of belief, not because of a lack of discipline, but because of this feeling that God's kind of sort of let us down. Have you ever felt like God has let you down? If that's you, this message is for you. Especially if you're not a Christian, I think this message is going to help you. And I want to let you know what I'm going to do because I like to know what's going to happen. Here's a structure. What we're going to do is tell a story, and then I'm going to make 4 points from the Bible. That's it. But let's start with that story. 20 years ago, I was a student at Wheaton College, and I was on the concert committee there. We were the committee that got to choose who was going to come in and play Christian concerts in our chapel. And I cashed in all my chips, and I lobbied really hard to get them to book the Pope of Christian music, Chris Tomlin, okay? It's a real deal, right? Back then, he was young and cute, and all the girls just thought he was so handsome. And he came and wrote this song called Indescribable. Some of you might remember it. He went on the Indescribable tour. And in the Christian world, Indescribable was basically as famous as Nickelback, right? I mean, it was like, look at this photograph, right? And that concert slapped. It did not disappoint. I don't even like music that much, but I loved that concert. Now, I put everything I had into getting Chris Tomlin there, and I really had to make a lot of concessions to this girl on the committee who was very opinionated. I found her deeply irritating, and she wanted to book this new nobody artist that no one had ever heard of. And she liked him, and she was like, had to be unique. She was one of those people. And I'm not going to say the name of this guy because it ended up that he became super famous. Everybody, Christian and non, has heard songs by this guy. And this girl booked him, but she was not certified to drive a Wheaton College van. And no one wanted to pick him up from the airport because no one knew of him. But I was certified to drive a van, so I got forced into doing it. And that's a bad idea, mainly because I am a terrible classic Asian driver. I mean, what's a turn signal? I don't know. I've never used one. But by some miracle, we make it to the airport, right? Midway Airport. And I realized when I get there, I was like, I have no idea what this guy looks like. I probably should have checked that out. But I look on the arrivals sidewalk, and it turns out there's this guy who looks exactly like you'd think a Christian artist would look. And I asked ChatGPT to make a picture of just a stereotypical cool Christian music artist from 2005. And this is what it made, which is, this is exactly what he looked like. Like, I want to show you his album cover because it's remarkably similar, but I'm not going to do that. But he was wearing, skinny jeans when they were really avant-garde. They were like brand new, cutting edge. They didn't make men's skinny jeans, so men would wear women's jeans at that time. And I'm talking, these are like spray painted on there, you know what I mean? Hanging on for dear life. And then he had the worst emo haircut. You guys who are 40 and older, you remember these haircuts. It was like, so embarrassing. He had a V-neck so deep I could basically see his belly button. And he gets in the van, and I say, hey, I'm John. I'm glad to see you. I hope you're excited to be playing today. I know the students of Wheaton are so excited for you to lead us in worship. I just feel like we're excited and anticipating a move of God. And he said, and this was sort of his voice, honestly, I meet a lot of people, and it's been a long day. It's been a long day. And just being honest, I'm not really excited to be here. I'm just not feeling God's presence at the moment. And I just love to ride in silence because I'm super tired. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm sure it's been a long day, whatever. So we drive back in silence, and he whips out his Nokia brick phone. Do you remember these things right here? Many of you are too young, but everybody had one of these, right? And I can hear the sounds on it. He's playing Snake. I had one of these, true story, a little bit of an anger problem, and at one point I accidentally threw it out my car window. And I went back and got it like a real dum-dum, and it like fell apart like Legos, and I just like snapped it back together, and it was good to go. Turned on, great, right? Amazing phones, right? So he's playing Snake, and I can hear him. He's doing very well. I can hear all the little pieces of fruit getting eaten, and I'm like, wow, this guy. And then he gets a call. Remember that? Remember that, right? You younger people, you don't know, but that like defined my generation, right? And he answers in a totally different voice. Instead of being like, yeah, I'm just not. He's like, oh, hey, girl. I just landed, and I am so excited to see you. And I'm just so excited about God moving tonight. I just feel his presence. And I'd love for you to meet me in the green room. Maybe we could pray together before the concert. And I'm like, this dude just told me he didn't want to be here, and he didn't feel like God was going to move, and God wasn't present. But now he's simping for this girl that he's sweet on. Which I just thought, what a phony, okay? I don't like this guy. I don't like this guy at all. And here's the thing. I had an expectation that this guy was totally gonna be godly and authentic, and he did not meet that expectation at all. And to this day, when I hear this guy's songs, which happens all the time, because he's become super famous, I get a bad taste in my mouth. And to be honest, what he did wasn't really that bad. But I had an expectation about who he was going to be, and he ended up being something totally different. I thought he was going to be kind and godly and humble, and he ended up being human and tired and detached. And here's my big overarching point, okay? An unmet expectation makes you really not like somebody. It's true. And for this particular person, for me, 20 years later, I still think, what a bum. Every time I hear his songs on the radio, which is a lot. But I think in a similar way, the number one barrier to people's relationship with Jesus is unmet expectations. I think a lot of us have certain expectations of Jesus. I thought he would be this way, but he ended up being that way. And tonight, Christmas Eve, I think there's a lot of people who may have experienced some hurt because you had an expectation about who Jesus would be, and he didn't meet it. And it's not that he ever said he would be that way. He never said he'd be that way. We just made up an expectation about him. And to be honest, I don't know that it's fair. And I think that when you remove those false expectations and discover who Jesus really is, you'll realize he was better than you ever thought. And that you've been holding him accountable for something that was never real. So tonight, I want to talk about 4 false expectations that we have for Jesus. And the first one is this. I think a lot of us think that Jesus is a pill we take and everything will be better. It's hard because the truth is, statistically, when you follow Jesus, his plan for human life is the best way statistically to maximize the possibility of good outcomes. I mean, following Jesus usually does make your life better, but it's not a promise for a perfect life. In fact, Jesus himself tells us we'll face issues when we follow him. We still face problems. And he's much more than some pill we take to make problems go away. And I think most of us in our heads know that, but a lot of us in our hearts still manage to start putting these expectations on Jesus. In the Bible, there's a sibling group, 2 sisters and 1 brother. Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Some of you have heard of them. And they were good friends with Jesus, loved Jesus. Saw Jesus do miracles, heal people like a boss, do great things. And the brother Lazarus, he gets sick, and they think, look, we've been really good to Jesus. We've helped him out, given to him, served with him. He's gonna take care of us. It's just what he does. It'll be a cinch for him to heal Lazarus. But Jesus doesn't even show up. They send word that they need him, and he doesn't come, and Lazarus dies. And Jesus shows up too late, after the funeral even. It says in John chapter 11 and verse 20, when Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary stayed in the house. Have you ever been so mad at Jesus you don't even want to go see him? I'm not going to church. I trusted him, and he didn't come through. Mary didn't even want to come see him. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, If only you had been here, my brother would not have died. I wonder if anyone here has ever been there. You have an expectation that Jesus is going to come and heal, that Jesus is going to come and save, that he's going to come and take care of you, and he doesn't. And some of you are like, Mary, I'm not even going to talk to him anymore. Some of you are like Martha, you're raging at him. If only you'd have been here. Jesus, where were you? For those of us who have had this experience, Christmas and the birth of Jesus, to be honest, kind of a tough time for you. Because you tried to take the Jesus pill. You gave, you served, you got baptized, you made profession, you were a part of it for years, and you took that pill and the divorce still happened, and the cancer still came, and the womb never opened, and the breakthrough didn't come. Jesus, if only you'd have been here, it wouldn't have happened. There's not much that can hurt more. Jesus, I trusted you, and you didn't do what I thought you would do. But it is funny, odd, because he never promised he would. You know, he never promised he would heal Lazarus. He never promised he would stop the divorce. He never promised he would fix the custody issues or heal the cancer. He never promised to be a fix-it pill that we take. And I think a lot of us, when we're honest, what we realize is this expectation is rooted in a notion of who we think God is, not in who he actually is. And we claim to love God, and we claim to know God, but we really only know and love a fake version of him that we made up. And to be honest, it's kind of lame. And the expectation is that Jesus is a pill we take to fix our problems. The reality is he never said he would do that. He said he would love us through our problems. He said he would, by grace through faith, give us eternity, but he did not say that he would make all of our problems go away. Second expectation we put on Jesus, we say, Jesus is a buffet that we can pick and choose what we want from. You guys remember Old Country Buffet? I used to love it as a kid. I was like, wow, this is amazing, right? And my plate would just be filled only with brown colored food because I like brown. I'm brown. No, just kidding. What was that? It's not a good restaurant. But anyway, I think there's a lot of people who treat God like a buffet. Take a little grace, take a little bit of heaven. I love that don't murder. I'll take a dollop of that. You know, not murdering is super cool. I love that one. But I'm going to skip over his plan for sex, dating, gender, and marriage. I don't like that. And we're just like the story of this guy in the Bible, the young man, they call him the rich young ruler. He came to Jesus in the Bible. He said, Jesus, I'm pretty good at following you. You know, I do a lot of things. Check out all the stuff that I do for you. And he noted all the things that he put on his plate from the Jesus buffet. Jesus, I love you. I give. I serve. I help out like all the time. Sure, I mean, I left out some things. And specifically, he left out trusting God with his possessions. And Jesus was like, hey, that's great. I'm glad you do all that stuff, but you don't love all of me. You don't love your possessions, or you love your possessions more than you love me. And I want you to choose me first. And it says in Matthew 19:22, but when he had heard this, the young man went away sad, for he had many possessions. And I think there's a lot of us who get mad at God. We think that he's a buffet, and we claim to love him. But we end up sad and hurt when we realize he will not accept that kind of relationship with us. When I was young, I'd say things like, I could never follow a God who fill in the blank. And I had expectations about how loving and accepting God would be. Specifically, when he rejected some of my life's actions and when he rejected the core wiring of some people that I loved, I got mad at him. And here's the thing, I claimed to love God, but I didn't. I loved a false God that I had created from a buffet of traits, and I was angry at God for failing to meet my expectations. But here's the reality. I never loved God. I loved a caricature of God, a false version of God that I had made. And I think a lot of us do this. The expectation is Jesus is a buffet that we can kind of pick and choose what we want from. The reality is Jesus is Lord of all, or he's not our Lord at all. We can't change him based on our feelings, friends. Third false expectation is we think Jesus rewards the good and punishes the bad. And there's a lot of people, good, religious, churchy people who get tripped up on this one, both today and in the Bible. In the Bible, this group of people is called the Pharisees. And they were angry at Jesus because Jesus hung out with bad people and they worked really hard to do good things. And they kind of went to Jesus and they said, hey, it's not fair that you're kind of hanging out with these people who aren't that great. You should hang out with us. We're awesome. And give us rewards. And Jesus' response was kind of famous. He told a story about something that we now call the prodigal son. It's a story of two brothers. One lived a really wild life and squandered his inheritance. And then he returned home, humbled to the father. And in the climax of the story, the father embraces the son, throws a big banquet for the wayward son, kills the fattened calf. If you don't know what the fattened calf is, imagine bacon-wrapped filet mignon. All the time, I'm like, thank God I'm not Jewish, right? I love bacon so much. Praise God for that. So glad, okay? All one in Christ Jesus. Anyway, the brother gets upset. The good brother sees this grace and kindness that is shown to his bad brother after he was terrible to the father, and the good son thinks, hey, that's not fair that you would do that. And he represents the Pharisees. And the text says, the older brother was angry and he wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, all these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing that you told me to do. And all that time, you never even gave me one young goat for a feast with my friends, a chuck roast. Yet when this son of yours, not a brother of mine, a son of yours, when I'm really mad at my kids, I tell my wife, your son, your daughter did this, right? When this son of yours came back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. I think there's a lot of people, a lot of churches who sort of resent seeing prodigal, rebel sons and daughters run to God the Father again, because there's a part of us that feels like it's not fair. And in every other religion and movement, the expectation and the reality would be that God rewards the good and punishes the bad. But here's a unique part of Christianity, and this is different. We are a place where no one's perfect and everyone's welcome because we believe we're all bad compared to how great and holy and wonderful God is. We believe we have a heaven so good and a God so great that the best in this world looks terrible compared to him. And when you think about it, I mean, that's kind of awesome. I mean, I want that. I want a heaven that is so much better than this world. But that makes Christianity different because we're not fueled by having our good deeds outweigh our bad deeds, or by being better than the next guy. We're fueled by gratitude because of the mercy, grace, forgiveness, and compassion that God has shown us. The expectation is that Jesus rewards the good and punishes the bad, but the reality is we all fall short of God's goodness. And that he gives grace and mercy to those whom he calls, and that no one's perfect and everyone's welcome. The fourth expectation I want to talk about is Jesus is glorious King. And this one's a little confusing because Jesus is King, and he is glorious. But his life on earth was different than we thought it would be. Everybody expected him to come and be like this. You know what I mean? And that's cool. We imagine Jesus being the best of the best. And most of us live life trying to be like this, trying to walk in confidence, getting others to serve us. We think that greatness comes from being served. But Jesus says those who truly want to be the greatest, the most transformational, should take the lowest position, should be willing to serve. Think about this. Jesus is God. And the Christmas story is about God leaving heaven and coming to earth as a baby. I don't know if any of you have ever gone from rags or from riches to rags. Okay, most people think about going from rags to riches, but Jesus went from riches of heaven to rags, right? My wife went from riches to rags when she married me, okay? That's actually true. But this is Jesus. This is the Christmas story. It says, and while they were there, the time came for her baby to be born. This is Mary giving birth to Jesus. So she gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth, basically burlap, and laid him in a manger because there was no lodging available for them. Mary gives birth to God, and he lands on a manure-covered floor, and then she wraps him essentially in burlap cloth and puts him in an animal feeding trough. Ladies, how many of you want to put your babies in that situation? That's what a manger is. And just imagine the gap, right? Imagine going from heaven to a manure-filled stable and an animal feeding trough. I mean, that's crazy. I thought about like the biggest riches to rags story I could think of. This is Bernie Madoff. Some of you remember him. He was the richest man in the world at one point, worth $64 billion. He had a Manhattan penthouse overlooking Central Park, oceanside mansions, private yachts, private jets, and he lost it all and was imprisoned. He spent his last years in a concrete prison cell, living in fear and abuse from inmates. Think about what that'd feel like, to have it all and lose it all. And it's nothing compared to what Jesus went through. We expect him to be a conquering hero. But the great conquering heroes of history, Titus, Caesar, Augustus, are footnotes in Jesus' story. Because as he said, those who are the greatest should become the least, like he did. Our expectation is that he would sit on an iron throne and rule, but instead he came to a manger throne and died on a cross and gave up the glory of heaven for us. Imagine losing the mansions of heaven for worse than a prison cell. I think Christmas is a time where we reflect on how much he loved us. He gave that up for us. He did that for us. Now I think back to that musician I met 20 years ago in preparing for this message. You know, I kind of thought, well, John, you are a pastor. Maybe you should bury the hatchet. You know what I mean? For this guy. So I actually was like, well, let's just do some reading about him. So I went deep. I was going into Reddit posts, X posts, anything I could find and dig up on. Is he actually that bad, or did I just find him on an off day? And here's what I realized. For 20 years, everybody who has known him has said that he is a faithful, kind, humble, godly man. An introvert for sure, but he's a human being who has walked in the grace of Jesus and led millions of people in worship around the world. He didn't really do anything wrong other than be tired and a human for a moment and hit on a girl he was sweet on, which I have done that when I was pursuing my wife, right? He's loved one woman faithfully for like 16 years. Jesus had tired moments. Today as a pastor, I've had dozens of people who have been disappointed when they meet me. They always say, wow, you're so much shorter in real life. I'm like, wow, you're so much dumber in real life, okay? Just kidding. You're smarter and better looking than I thought you'd be. What he did was fail to meet an expectation that I had. That's what this artist did. One that in introspect was unfair, in retrospect was unfair and unreasonable. That he would be full of life and deeply engaged with a van driver. To be honest, he was probably fearing for his life. He's probably in the van playing Snake because I'm driving so terribly. He's like, am I gonna live? I love Jesus. I don't know if I wanna see him today, you know what I mean? Like, can you pull it together? And I held on to a grudge against this guy for the better part of 20 years. You know, it was rooted in bad expectations, wasn't it? False expectations. This Christmas Eve, I wonder if somebody has been holding Jesus at arm's length because you expected him to be something, a pill you could take, a buffet you could pick from, a set of rules you could keep, some boxes you could check, and when he didn't do what you hoped, you pushed him out of your heart. All this reminds me of a story about Moses the prophet. Some of you know this story. He found God in a burning bush. God was speaking to him, and Moses argued with God, and he said, look, if I go to the people of Israel and I tell them the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they will ask me, what is his name? And what should I tell them? And in Hebrew culture from antiquity, a name was a big deal. A name meaning was essentially the essence of who someone was. God would prophetically name people, and it meant who they would become. And so when Moses asks God, what is your name? He's saying, God, reveal your essence to me. What is your essence? And God's reply is powerful, I think. God replied to Moses, I am who I am. When God reveals his name to humans, he says, I am who I am. What does that mean? It means I am not who you expect me to be. I am not affected by what you feel about me. Your expectations about me, however strong they may be, are not going to change who I am. And if you love me, you're not going to try and make me into your expectations. You will learn who I am and love me. And here's the thing I think so many of us do. We try to get Jesus to worship us by forming him into a little tool that worships the image of God that we want. That's like wrong. Tonight, I want you to know something doesn't come from nothing. intelligent design doesn't come from no intelligence. We know for sure that atheism is a superstition. We know for sure that the God of the Bible is the one true God. And here's the thing that all of us try to ignore. You will stand before the God of the universe at the end of this life. And what will he say to you when you see him? Silly story. When I was 16, I was out pranking. And back in the day, kids used to be dumb. We would like toilet paper and fork and stuff and dumb, right? And I had this plan, okay? I had this plan where if the police came, I'd leave my ID at home and I'd run away. And if they got me, I'd be like, you don't know my name and I can't remember it either. So you gotta let me go, right? It's almost like this cartoonish version of authority. Dumb, 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 right? And when the police did come, they got me because I ran directly into a bird feeder. It's like a turtle on my back. I was a stammering, nervous wreck because I encountered real authority. None of my plans worked because I stood before a true authority. And I feel like so many of us treat God that way. Well, we have these expectations, these little grievances. But listen, someday, sooner than you think, you will look full in his wonderful, awesome, terrifying, glorious, holy face. And so many of us, we've got this plan. I'm not gonna show him my ID. You're gonna ask him, why'd you let me suffer? It's not fair that you made me this way. I don't follow you because I disagreed with you. We think we're gonna be tough. But I think when you see him, your expectations will be blown away by the might of his glory. You will be stammering as you bow to his glory, and you will see him for who he really is in his radiant glory. Tonight, I am calling you to put aside your expectations. What are you holding on to? What expectation are you demanding that God meet? For some of us, like, God, be nice, like I think you should be. Heal my person. How are you forcing Jesus to worship you rather than you worship him? Tonight, what if you said, I'm gonna put aside the expectations that I've had for Jesus my whole life, and I wanna seek him for who he really is in his word. I'm gonna have the band come onto the stage in a minute and they're gonna lead us in a song, but I wanna do something different. I want us to spend some time reflecting on our expectations about God. What ones that we put on him that aren't true? On your seat, you've got this card, like this, right? Blue card. And on the back side, I want you to take it out, and I wrote this question on it. It says, what expectation of Jesus am I holding that I need to lay down to truly know him? I want you to answer that question. I'm gonna answer it too. And I want you to just write it down here. What do you need to lay down in order to seek God and know who he really is, not who you expect him to be? Even if you're not a Christian, in fact, especially if you're not a Christian, I want you to take this challenge, because here's what I think. I think as we set aside our expectations, we're gonna find that we love and adore the God we discover so much more than we thought we would. So I want you to remain seated as we spend some time reflecting on who Jesus really is as the band leads us.